Thank you very much, ma'am. Yeah. Am I clearly audible and visible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good evening to one and all. I, Jannavi Kapgate, on behalf of the Center for Women and Child Rights and Gender Justice, cordially welcome Vice Chancellor of MNLU, Professor Dilip Uke, sir, respected Registrar, Professor Anil Variat, sir, our honorable speaker for today, Ms. Sutapa Sanyal, ma'am, who's a former DGP. We're honored to have you here, ma'am. Faculty members, students, researchers, and everyone present here today. MNLU was established under the Maharashtra National Law University Act and is one of the premier national law university in India. Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud of Supreme Court of India is the Chancellor of India of this university, and he not only guides but also inspires this institution with his novel ideas and rich experience. Professor Dilip Uke, sir, who's a renowned academician in the field of law and has a varied experience in teaching and research, is the Vice Chancellor of MNLU Mumbai. The Center for Women and Child Rights and Gender Justice was established with a vision to strengthen the existing knowledge and contribute for the rights of women, children, and LGBTQ community, not only in India but at the global perspective. Our center not only strives to build awareness among the youth regarding these rights but also helps them. PCGT, that is Public Concern for Governance Trust, came into existence in year 2002 when good and straightforward officers were being humiliated by political leadership. Two of the trustees, Dr. R.K. Anand sir and Mr. Gandhi, filed PIL against the proposed transfer of an upright IPS officer. They succeeded in the Bombay High Court. The idea of taking up a stick on behalf of the good and honest officers and target corruption was the main cause why PCGT came into existence. PCGT was founded by Shri Rubero sir, the DGP and retired IPS officer, R.K. Anand sir, pediatrician and former director of Jaslok Hospital, and B.G. Deshmukh sir, retired IS officer and chief secretary of Maharashtra, in order to promote transparency and accountability in governance and to inculcate Sadbhavana values among the citizens. PCGT is divided into various verticals such as Youth for Governance, Kuchor, Right to Information, Right to Services, and POSCO. The POSCO department is headed by Advocate Sonali Shelar ma'am, who is also present with us here today. Under this department, the organization has educated hundreds of tribal girls, college going and school going students about the POSCO Act. PCGT has also initiated and successfully completed various research programs such as the Casteism in Prison program. Today, the Center, in association with PCGT, is proud to announce this webinar series themed Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. With commencement of this webinar series, we enter a new journey of continued and fruitful partnership with PCGT. Before we begin, I would request everyone to keep their microphones muted and the audience are encouraged to switch on a camera for a more interactive session. I would now like our assistant professor and coordinator of the center, Shraddha Gaikwad ma'am, to deliver the welcome address and lay down the vision of our webinar.
Thank you, Janvi. Good evening and a very warm welcome. As the coordinator of the Center for Women, Child Rights and Gender Justice, Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, I welcome the Vice Chancellor of the university, Professor Dr. Dilip Uke, sir, the Registrar of MNLU Mumbai, Professor Dr. Anil Variat, sir, our chief guest and distinguished speaker for today, Ms. Sutapa Sanyal, the former DGP of Uttar Pradesh, the chairperson of Public Concern for Governance Trust, Mr. VP Raja sir, the trustees of PCGT, my colleagues, dear friends, students, and all the participants to the four-day national webinar series organized by the Center for Women, Child Rights and Gender Justice, MNLU Mumbai, in association with PCGT. As today marks the first day of the national webinar series on gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, which is in keeping with the UN theme of observance for 2022. At the event, we look forward to the distinguished speakers who will share their unprecedented experiences, and I'm sure that we will get to learn a lot from them and understand about their unique frame of mind. We are pleased to have with us accomplished personalities who broke the patriarchal bias and made it to the summit of a stereotypically rugged and biasedly topsy-turvy mountain. To proceed with the event, I pass the baton over to the joint coordinator of the center, Ms. Shreya Mukta. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It is my proud privilege to welcome our esteemed guest of today's session, former Director General of Police UP, Sutapa Sanyalji, whose presence is a source of inspiration for all of us. She is icon of unimpeachable credential and integrity. She is recipient of Police Medal for Distinguished Services from Honorable President of India. She founded UP Police Mahila Samman Prakosht, an award-winning ISO certified police unit that worked to empower over 175 million women and children. And this initiative was awarded with several honors like FICCI Smart Policing Award, Digital Empowerment Foundation Manthan Award. She has also served as advisor to GAIL India Limited, chairperson of Internal Complaint Committee of Central Adoption Resource Authority under Ministry of Women and Child Development. Currently, she serves as independent consultant to Kailash Satyarthi Children Foundation. Ms. Sanyal has been widely lauded as champion of women and child empowerment for her work is recognized by US Department of State and Interpol. She was also honored as an Indian woman leader by British High Commission. She also represented the government in discussions with delegations from Canada and European Union to provide her insight on gender issues. Her biodata is encyclopedia of achievements, which I cannot share completely because of shortage of time. But I must say it is a proud privilege to have you here, ma'am. Now I would like to request Kalyani and Prakriti to take over the session, please.
Before that, thank you for the introduction, ma'am. Today here we have with us VP Raja sir, who is a retired IS officer and the chairperson of PCGT. I request PC Raja sir to say a few words and enlighten the audience. Just to introduce Raja sir has worked as an IS officer not just in district, state, but also at the center level. He's worked with the Ministry of HRD, the Planning Commission, and the Ministry of Defense. We're honored to have you here, sir. The platform is yours.
Thank you very much. I thank the esteemed organizations, the Maharashtra National Law University, the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Dilip Oki, the Registrar, Anil Variat, the two assistant professors who are in charge of this Center for Women, Child's Right and Gender Justice, and our chief guest for the day, Sutapa Sanyal. I have this practice, thanks to Google, to actually get to know the participants. So I did hear I watched the TED talk of Mrs. Sanyal, Be the CEO of Your Own Life, 19 minutes delivered at Lucknow. And similarly, I watched the Vice Chancellor's talk given about 2 years ago, to be precise, on 2nd March 2020 at the CMR University in Bangalore. So I'm really thrilled to have the distinguished people speak to students. PCGT, as has already been mentioned, is an organization which is about 20 years old. The main aim was to fight corruption, but along with that, we took up how to ensure accountability and transparency in all walks of administration. And after the RTI Act, the Right to Information Act came into being, we have been using the RTI and also teaching a large number of people on how to use RTI to get information out and also follow its to its logical conclusion. Of course, in our efforts, we also find that, well, there are a lot of problems. Problems seem to be increasing. And one of the things we noticed is, in spite of 70 years after independence, after the constitution came into effect, we have really not taken the constitution to the people of the country. Very few people really know what the constitution is. So we have started a program for constitutional literacy, a constitutional literacy program. Sonali, who has played a major part in organizing today's events in consultation with the university, the Maharashtra National Law University, is passionate about children and women's rights and the problems they face. And she gets along, she has excellent communication style. And she has been doing a lot of work, both in the area of child safety and women's safety, including the legislations of POXO and POSH. And she's committed to it. We are really proud of her determination and kind of work that she has been doing. So I wouldn't like to take too much time, but after hearing the Vice Chancellor's talk given 2 years ago, which I heard just about an hour ago, I'm in complete agreement with him that it is necessary to know the Constitution. Of course, the talk which I heard was basically on the preamble and interpreting the preamble and various things that happened in the Constituent Assembly. But at the end of it, the point he made was, it's all about basic human values. So after hearing that, I realized that is the real problem. Ethics has two issues. One is you should know what is right and what is wrong. So constitutional morality is required for governance. So for that, you should know the Constitution. But even after knowing the Constitution, there is no assurance that you will abide by it. I'm reminded of this old story where a king wanted to judge the loyalty of all his subjects. So on a Amavasya day, a new moon day, he told all his subjects to pour a glass of milk in his empty tank behind his palace. Next morning, it was full of water because everybody thought that since others will be pouring milk, if I pour water, it will go unnoticed. And that seems to be the problem. We have a constitution. We have oaths taken to the Constitution by all the senior functionaries of all the three wings, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. And yet, the minute after the oath is taken, it gets violated with impunity. So we have these very strange things happening where one of the senior most law officers of the government, like the Solicitor General, speaks an absolute lie before the Supreme Court and nothing happens to him. Or the master of the roster decides to keep habeas corpus petitions pending for years, important matters. Much can be said, but to such a distinguished group, I don't have to list it. But we are in great trouble. Gender is one of the issues, but discrimination on every aspect, the non-discrimination is actually, the ground reality is very, very different. I think the sociology of India and the constitution of India are not gelling, and we have not done much after, of course, what Mahatma Gandhi did and what people like Ambedkar did, both of whom obviously wanted what the constitution provides as a roadmap, with some differences. Ambedkar was more impatient. He was sure that we can't have the kind of society which the constitution looks forward without fighting both capitalism and Brahminism. While, of course, Gandhi felt more in taking everybody along to the extent possible, but the goals were identical. But today we are in much, much greater trouble. And of course, Uttar Pradesh, where our chief guest worked as the Director General of Police, spent 30 years of her life, is now being used as a experimental state for trying out things which are against the Constitution. But we'll be happy if she also gives us some idea of how she feels. But without taking any more time, I'm eagerly looking forward to hearing our chief guest and participation from all others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful words. Coming on to the much awaited portion of the session, I would now like to call upon the PR wing head, Kalyani, and the research wing member, Prakriti, to interview Miss Sanyal ma'am and take us through her journey. If any of the audience members have any questions in the course of the interview, they're requested to put them in the chat box. We'll address them in the end of the session. The platform is all yours, Kalyani and Prakriti.
I hope I'm audible clearly.
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Janvi. Good evening, everyone. We welcome you to this webinar today. My name is Kalyani Paunikar, the head of Public Relations Wing of the Center for Women, Child Rights and Gender Justice. I, along with Prakriti, a member of Research Wing, will be interviewing Ms. Sutapa Sanyal for today. Before starting with the interview, we would like to hear a few words on your IPS journey, ma'am.
First of all, thank you very much. Thank you to NLU Maharashtra and the PCGT for inviting me to this wonderful gathering, August gathering of people and such a meaningful topic. That's very, very important. So my journey was kind of topsy-turvy. Well, I was born and brought up in Bihar, right? But I came from a very, very conservative, middle-class Bengali family of those times, right? So, but then, there was something, and probably that is something which has shaped my ideas about gender justice and gender equality somewhere at the back of my subconscious mind. Like, we were two sisters and one brother, but never ever do I remember my parents, kind of distinguishing between the three of us. So that is one very important thing. It's slightly away from the topic, I mean, the question which you have raised, but I just want to kind of flag this issue that upbringing, like Raja sir was talking about the values. Where do these values start from? Like charity, everything, even equality, it starts from home. So parenting and upbringing of the children is one of the most important tools for inculcating these core values, which have actually gone missing in today's world. So it was a very humble journey, but my father was in the civil services. And somewhere, and yes, I studied in a convent school, so that entire picture is over there. It was a very, very conservative framework which I'm discussing now. And at that point of time, IAS, IPS, nothing was there on my mind. So this is another, issue which I would love to flag to our young friends out here. It's all right if you haven't decided what you want to become by class 10 or 12. Like in many homes, the parents will say, beta batao kya tum banna chahte ho, in front of guests, and these are such embarrassing things. So it's a kind of request for the parents also who may be here, that let the children pursue their passions, let them understand what they want, let them understand themselves first. The rest of the world will fall into place, right? If we understand ourselves and if we are self-aware, things do fall into place. So all throughout school, obviously, like any other child, I wanted to become everything, rather something X at one point of time, Y at another point of time. So that was there, right? But then I did my master's in economics, and I think somewhere that shaped a lot of my thinking process because, I understood that a lot of inequality and injustice existed in the world. I could see it around me. By that time, I had started understanding these things. So, but what? In those days, we had very few choices before us. You could become a lecturer, you could become a lawyer, you could become a civil servant, and a couple of other things. It wasn't this kind of an array of professions which now exist. And now, children studying abroad, they kind of marry different subjects and come up with third subject of their own, and all those that elbow room is there in today's education pattern. But we didn't have those. There were those three streams. Either you took up arts. It was not even called humanities at that time. So you took up arts or science or commerce or home science. These were the four options. So somewhere when I completed my master's in economics, and then I started teaching in Patna University. I come from Patna, Bihar. And but then, I always wanted to be in a space where I could make a difference around me. That was always there. So that bottom line was always there. And while I was teaching and interacting with my students, somewhere in my mind, I thought that, okay, let me get into the civil services, because that is one space where you have a lot of ammunition, right? You have a lot of tools. Either you waste them in doing useless things, or you can make great use of them in making a difference around you. So therefore, I joined the civil services and IPS in this case. And so I landed up at the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy. So that was my journey up to that point.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, before moving on to the next question, I would request you to switch on your camera.
Oh, sorry. I didn't notice. It got
Yes,
this
ma'am, it's visible.
now. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would like to move on to the
I
interview.
don't know how it got shut off. Yeah.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
becoming a civil servant, that too police officer, wasn't a popular choice for women during 90s, 80s. What made you choose this field?
Just as I said, I told you I started off as a lecturer, but then I thought entering the civil services will give me more elbow room to make a difference in the lives of people, right? Because you get to interact with so many people. So many people look up to you for help, when they are in trouble. And there's one thing: if an IPS officer can, implement the rule of law, then he or she can deliver justice to a lot of needy people who look up to them. Because, ultimately at the end of the day, I visualize these services as, kind of service delivery systems. And there's a lot of scope to help out with the underserved people, vulnerable people, people who are at the margins, who do not have so much of, sorry to use this word, who can, do arm flexing and arm twisting to get their work done. So those are the people who you can help through these services.
I'm sure I move on to the next question.
Yeah, Kalyani.
Yes, ma'am. Working women have different set of challenges, especially in the police force. What challenges did you face, and how was your experience been about it?
Yeah, you're right. Women would be having a lot of different challenges. And the police service being one service which is highly, highly demanding, like, You don't have a 10 to 5 job here if you are in the district emergency force, right? You're supposed to be there all the time. If there is a situation where you're required, you are required, right? You just can't vanish from there. You just can't do that. So you have to attend to all the challenges that come in. Now, what happens is, if you go back in time, it was 1985, right? When I, rather 86, when I actually started my first posting and the actual field work, right? Because 84 batch and then 85, we have our training at the police academy. And then we have a little bit of our district training that used to happen at that time. Now there's a little bit of back and forth, they keep going back to the academy and again district and all that. But we had a straight 1 year training at the academy, NPA, and then the district training. And then we would go on to the district as ASPs, Assistant Superintendents of Police, first under trainings and then proper ASPs, right? So now the problem was, see, I told you about my background. So see where I was coming from. It was a very conservative middle class family, Bengali family from Bihar, with a very strict kind of convent education. And, I landed up at NPA as the only woman IPS officer in that 1984 batch. So that was my biggest problem, because it was difficult for me to and a lot of, these kinds of interactions were not very much in vogue at that point of time. So it seems like some kind of an archaic world that we are coming from, but that was it at that time. We weren't so outgoing, but here I come and land up at a place where there are about 77 other officers who are all male. So that was my biggest challenge. How do I interact with them? Right. The same problem happened when I come to the state. There were just 2 or 3 of my senior officers who were females. And then for a long period of time, I was again the only one. So, what happens when you are the only person in the room, right? It becomes slightly uncomfortable. So that was something which I faced right from the beginning. There was so, and this is a profession where there is, even today, lack of adequate amount of diversity. So you think of that period of time, and what to talk of diversity, there is also a lack of inclusion. And I'll give you a couple of examples, like when I got promoted and we reached the rank of SPs, we are supposed to serve in districts. Now, whenever the issue arose of posting me to one of those districts, there was always that question in the minds of the powers that be, etc. Would she be able to deliver? Would she be able to, manage the law and order? Will she be able to control crime? So, but these questions didn't come so often when they were posting male IPS officers. So, over a period of time, when you feel that there's always this question mark, you feel excluded. Now, that is not a very nice feeling, whether it is the police services or any other organization. So that lack of diversity and inclusivity was one of the biggest challenges. But then, I would also say, because you may ask me the next question that how did you tackle this? But then, I discovered a couple of things, right? During my NPA days, I was actually in awe of my male colleagues because they were actually superior to me, physically superior to me. But then I gradually discovered that, well, I too was pretty good at certain things. Like I was pretty good at forensics, I was pretty good at yoga. So that self-discovery, that became an anchoring point for me because, I thought that, okay, look, now while I kind of leverage and feel confident and gain further confidence on the areas where I'm truly good. I would also try to be good, if not master, the other areas. Similarly, when I moved on to the district and whatever postings I've had, because we have an array of postings. So I have served in districts, I have served in armed battalions, I have served in the intelligence, at CID, etc., etc. There are a couple of things which I noticed. I noticed that if you are fair to everybody, people respect you, irrespective of whether you are a man or a woman. You have to be fair to people who look up to you. You cannot have double standards in dealing with them. Secondly, if you know your art and craft well enough, then again, your subordinates or your colleagues do respect you. So these were my two tools, which I used to kind of get over the lack of diversity and inclusivity, which was so dominant in the police services at that time. It still is. And I'll tell you, interesting things. You have your subordinate colleagues who really, they really don't know how to address you. So initially it was, sir, sir. I was also a sir. I was also a sahab to them. So those are the things, which happen when I told you, when you are the only one in the room. So yes, that was a challenge. It was one of the major challenges which I faced. Yeah, Kalyani.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so during this answer, you mentioned about the training. We often hear that the police training is so rigorous. Can you just elaborate on your experience on the training of police officer?
Yeah, it is very rigorous. I think it's one of the most rigorous trainings. And because but then again, it depends on where you are coming from. Like I told you, I was coming from a very conservative, middle-class Bengali family from Bihar with a background of convent education. So I was not that outgoing type. I was also not somebody with a big sports background, right? So that was my biggest challenge. And some of the trainings, because you're supposed to do everything. So, there was that regular thing of falling off the horses, cutting my knees, scraping my elbows, all those things were always there. So rock climbing, you scrape your hands or whatever. And so those things were there for me for the first time. And even by nature, I'm more of the academic kind. I have all the wrong interests. Police officers are not supposed to have interest in interior decoration or gardening or painting or music. Unfortunately, I had all of those. So my biggest challenge was, yes, the physical, the outdoors. But then, as I told you, I gradually trained myself. So we used to have equestrian events. But one thing I remember now that you are asking me, every evening, because of the rigorous physical activity we had to do right from 5 o'clock in the morning till the afternoon, rather not afternoon, till 10 o'clock. And then we'd have our internal, the indoor classes, which related to law, and the CRPC, IPC, etc., and the other things. And then in the afternoon, we would again have the outdoors. So it was a mix of both. But then I remember one common denominator every day was coming back in the evening, filling a bucket of warm water, putting some salt in it, and putting both my legs in it so that I could, go and join the parade next morning. So yes, it was physically very, very tough. Physically very tough. And yes, I also remember that because of these tough activities in the morning, many of us would go off to sleep during our indoor classes, right? And yes, one other very interesting thing, we used to have, for a certain number of periods, classes, you have something called UAC, that's the unarmed combat. So now we would come back from our indoor classes around about 1:30 or so, and at 2:30 we would be rushing to the the parade ground, at times the playground also, for these unarmed combat classes. Now that all the days that we had these unarmed classes, I don't think any of us had our lunch, because how do you do them if you eat a lot? So those were the days when we didn't have our lunch also, came back from the class and went to the next class. So yes, those things were there then, but these are things which, taught us a lot of discipline. And by the end of that year, I had, yes, physically I had become much stronger. Mentally, I had become much stronger. So that training did a lot of good, especially seeing my background from where I was coming. And that helped later on during my actual work in the field.
Yes, ma'am, we are also joined by Mr. Sivanandan today, former DGP of Maharashtra and founder of Roti Bank that feeds millions of people daily. I just wanted to acknowledge your presence, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, sir. This Roti Bank has a component in Telangana also? Is it so? Is it the same thing or they are different?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, it's Orissa. They've started the work in Orissa this year.
Okay.
Yeah, they have. I think they have centers at 8 places in the country, and
Yeah,
recently they started in Orissa.
because Aruna Bahuguna ma'am, she was director of NPA for some time. She runs it in Telangana. I keep talking to her, so I got to know about it. Okay, yeah.
We can continue, Kalyani.
How much time do we have for our interaction?
Ma'am, we have about 20 minutes.
Okay, okay. And then you open it to the floor, to the audience?
Yes, ma'am. Then we'll be taking questions from the audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am Prakriti and I will be taking over now. It is such an honor to be interviewing you, ma'am. UP is a conflicted state, especially regarding the safety of women. You were the first woman to reach up to the rank of Director General of Police in the UP cadre. How was your experience in doing so while simultaneously tackling the issues of women's safety there?
So some part of it I've told you. So now let me zero down on that women and child safety thing. So, I come back from my, I had served as advisor security to GAIL India Limited. That's at Delhi. It's a PSU, public sector undertaking, for about 5 years. And then I came back to the cadre, UP cadre, in, I think, 2014, I think, or 13 end, right? So UP was going through a pretty bad phase at that time. The Bahraj incident had happened and lots of things had happened, and women's safety and security had become a big issue at that point of time, right? So, being the senior most, again, woman IPS officer out there, the government wanted me to, start something from the scratch, which would kind of provide safety and security to women. The child part came later on, and then much later, the human trafficking angle was also added to it. So I got around starting this UP Police Mahila Samman Prakost, which was just mentioned. And yes, there were a lot of difficulties out there, but when we started this, there were actually, it was a bunch of programs. I had a long time back when I was SP, I had done a little bit of this sort of a work in the CBCID, that's the CID, where you had, again, I was the first one, first SP to be working with that branch of CID, which dealt with women-related crimes, right? So when second time I got this opportunity, it was there on my mind that I should start doing something which would take the shape of community-oriented policing. Because I have this thing in my head that the best policing is that which fulfills the requirement for those whom you are meant to serve, right? I mean, you can do a policing of any kind, but it doesn't help those people, then there's not much point in it. After all, that's the concept of democratic policing or participative policing, whatever you want to call it. Because I somehow at the back of my mind, I realized that the kind of policing which was being delivered at that point of time was somehow not becoming effective so far as women and children were concerned. What was required was more of their participation in designing the kind of programs where they could, the police could provide them a platform, right? And civil society and police would work together on certain issues which are very important. So 9 programs were designed, right? I'll talk about them later on. I just quickly brief all of you so that you get to have a kind of picture as to what was happening at that time. One of the programs was in-house training of the cops, because if you remember, in 2012, the POCSO Act, 2013, the Criminal Law Amendment Act, the Nirbhaya incident, and laws were, socially progressive laws were coming in at a very fast rate. Now it's important, and UP Police, is probably the second largest, or at times, if you Google, it has the largest number of people in the force in the world. So, and it was important that the police officers, all of them, were made aware of these laws, right? So this program was started. I had a name for each of these programs. I call this in-house training program as Nav Chetna. And there was a reason for it. Why Nav Chetna? Because I used to tell them that, look, you have this consciousness, but somehow, because of the nature of the work that you do, it has just gone off into your subconscious mind. Therefore, I want to pull it out of the subconscious mind, and therefore it is a new kind of chetna, new kind of consciousness. Similarly, there was a program called Adhikar, right? So this was talking about the laws related to women and children with the civil society. There were other programs also of teaching unarmed combat to school, to the girls. That was for the girls. And then I kind of thought that if public personalities could talk about these issues. So a program was designed called Jagriti. So we could get public personalities to talk about these issues. So there were 9 such programs. And if you talk of the difficulties, well, I'll be frank enough to say that even the police department was not very supportive of what I was doing. It was sad, but this was the truth, right? And I could see that on the whole in the state, the most important thing which was holding back women was the mindset. This mindset that women are meant to do certain things, this stereotyping, the culture of subculture of silence. When if a girl comes and tells her mother that, okay, somebody has sexually assaulted me, the mother says, okay, keep quiet. Most of the POCSO cases, I think, Sonali, it was mentioned that you're dealing with POCSO cases. Most of them happen within the family. So this huge subculture of silence is there. Subculture of victim blaming. Now, why would a woman go to a police station if what she hears is, what did you do to invite trouble to you? Then she suffers silently. So these were the 2-3 things which were so ingrained in the mindsets, that it was difficult. Change was difficult to bring about. Right. So when we started with these programs, it was something of a novelty at that point of time. It was, such programs were happening, I think, across the country, but not in UP. So yes, that was new. And we got a lot of support from civil society, from the NGOs, from academicians. And that is what I wanted. I just wanted to bring, because I feel these are not, you don't have linear solutions to crimes against women and children. They are multi-layered issues. So you can't get straight jacket solutions. You need multi-layered responses, right? You need, and for that, you need multiple, because there are multiple stakeholders who are delivering these services. And then all stakeholders have different core competencies. If I, as a police officer, I think that I can do everything in the world, well, I'm being foolish. So what should one do? Should bring all of them together. So basically it was, public-private partnership module based on community-oriented policing. So that is what we were trying to do. Yeah.
You mentioned cases of sexual assault of children. Was the department able to accept that POCSO Act needs to be taken more seriously?
Prakriti, at that point of time, as I told you, POCSO Act came in 2012. So it was a very new act at that point of time when this Mahila Samman Prakosh was started. It was started towards the end of 2014 and beginning of 2015. So POCSO Act was very new. And as I told you, because of this culture of silence, and most of the POCSO cases happen, the offenders are people whom the child trusts. Now you have to really get into the mind of the child to understand whether that child is going to speak up or not. Largely, the child won't speak up. And there are several reasons for it. Some of the reasons are that the child thinks that, okay, if it is some kind of a family member who is, first of all, most of them don't understand what is happening to them, right? Secondly, they think that if it's coming from the side of a family member, my parents would be knowing about it, and it must be something which is normal. So, these things happen. But there was no acceptance of this thing. Then gradually, when you keep telling them, gradually when you start, walking your talk, recognizing these cases, try to get FIRs lodged, try to get the offenders charge sheeted, then that slowly that word spreads. Now you think of the time, Sonali is an advocate, right? Think of 2012 when this act was just introduced, and think of today. Think of the rise in the number of cases. So at that point of time, there was not much recognition about all these things. Thankfully, it is growing, because unless people come out with it and keep pushing things under the carpet doesn't change the narrative. Similarly with POSH, there was a mention of the POSH Act, Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act. If women don't stand up and if they don't try to change, it's not easy. First of all, it's not easy to speak up, because victim blaming, right? That culture of silence in which the girl child is brought up and she becomes a woman. But unless she stands up and unless she tries to change the narrative, nothing will change. And then, the 2022 International Women's Day, that hashtag is bias, changing the bias something, right? And for sustainable tomorrows, equitable. How does society become equitable today? If you are holding back 50% of the population, whether by default or by design, how do you achieve equitable societies? And if societies are not equitable, they're not equal, they cannot be sustainable. So breaking that bias is a very important thing. There's so many unconscious biases, conscious biases against women. So who breaks them? The woman has to stand up for her rights. She has to question the narrative. She has to question what is happening. And we also need men as allies. If you do not bring in the men, and believe me, there are many men who actually understand these things, they're sensitive enough to understand these things, but peer pressure keeps them away. Right? And you have those silly stereotype things ki ladke rote nahi hai, or if they express emotions, they said that it chudi pehen li hai kya. I mean, we need to stop these silly, stupid narratives. These are the narratives that need to change. We need to recognize that it needs, all types of people to run a society. Therefore, diversity. If every person you meet is identical, then what will happen? That society, that organization will never progress, because there won't be any innovative ideas. If everybody thinks in the same way, if everybody walks the same path, you arrive at the same destination each time. So diversity, inclusion, equitable societies, equity, these are not just niche words. They carry a lot of meaning, whether in the police or government organizations, or in the corporates, or in the NGOs. They carry a lot of weight, and we need to recognize them. They're not just cliched words or fancy words. Yeah.
Ma'am, since you mentioned rape cases like Nirbhaya and the related rape laws, what is more effective in deterring crime? The implementation of the laws by law enforcement, or the punishments which the law prescribes for such offenders?
You were talking of sexual assault on women. Okay.
Yes.
See, for any offense, right, you will obviously have laws. One thing, that is the letter of the law. Second thing would be the spirit of the law, right? And rule of law. So that covers the implementation part. Now, there is an argument that since this is happening and that is happening, you should make the laws more stringent. How much more stringent can you make the law beyond the capital punishment? Tell me. There is capital punishment for rape. There is capital punishment in POXO cases, right? So law is progressing at its own rate. We need better implementation of the law. More number of laws? No. Better implementation of the law? Yes. But for that, now who implements the law, right? Who is a part of this justice delivery system, which normally is addressed as criminal justice system? I like to call it justice delivery system, right? Who are the components of it? The police officers, prosecutors, and the judiciary. So first, there has to be sensitization of these people. We need, apart from a police officer, we need a compassionate person. That child who has been violated and doesn't understand what has happened to him or her. I will use the word him also, because there's so many cases of, that's why child, it's a gender neutral term. So unless you stand in the shoes of the affected person, the harmed person, the violated person, how do you even get to start implementing the law? To know the law is something else. It can be Googled very easily. But where do you get that compassion inside? That has to come from inside. So being a good officer is just half the story. Being a good human being is the more important half. You know, I always keep saying that the root is through the heart, through the brain. Then justice can be delivered. Otherwise, you will just play around with the law. You won't deliver justice. And that poor person who is in trouble has come to you, looks up to you for justice, nothing else. So that is very important. Implementation. And implementation won't come unless you are able to empathize with the victim. And nowadays you call them survivors, right? So that is very important, apart from the letter of the law. Yes.
We see experiences that talk about how much impact it could have had in helping a woman who stood up to speak against sexual harassment. How do you think we can encourage men to be allies?
Yes, it's very important. You've rightly zeroed down on that's a very important question. See, men can be encouraged to become allies. Again, it's an issue of upbringing. If you are bringing up your boys in a sensitive manner, and if that message is there right from the beginning, they will grow up into sensitive men. They will be allies. But if you are treating your sons as trophies and giving them unlimited sense of, entitlement, they are growing up, they will grow up into insensitive men. So it's very important. Parenting is very important. And all the time, parents have to give the message that, look, your sister is as valued as you are in this family, and vice versa. Because we need, men and women who have rounded personalities. We don't need men and women who are just, half. So that is very important. I always talk of the parenting component. Then it gets into your blood chemistry. So and yes, boys have to be taught to interact with empowered women in the future. Because many men, because they have not been taught as boys, as young people, they do not know how to interact with empowered women when they get into organizations. Many of these posh related cases are because of certain behavioral deficiencies, right? So I think upbringing is very important. If the upbringing is okay, then they grow up to be responsible people, either ways.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have one question. Do you feel that economy would do well if we count women who make up for 50% in the workforce?
See, we were talking about this in the beginning, like most of the care work is being done. The care economy has become a very important concept in today's world, especially post-pandemic, because the pandemic, made people realize many women resigned from their jobs because they had children who were also sitting at home. They weren't going to school, so they had to teach their children. They had family members who were not well. They had to be looked after, right? So most of the unpaid care work is done by women. So recognition of the women's contribution is a must. Even if you look at the ILO statistics, or even if you are sensitive enough to observe around you, there are these social workers like ANMs and ASHA workers and all. They also don't get their regular salaries, and they're expected to do so much of work. Even when women are being paid, unfortunately, there is a downgrading of their profession. because they have to juggle with the household stuff and the work at the public place. They're not given equal wages. There's that 80-20 thing in countries like US also. Here also you will see women workers, even say, let's take the construction industry, right? The men would be the mistris working with that and, laying bricks and that. Women would be at the end of that supply chain of concrete. They would be carrying all those, the cement and the concrete on their heads. And they are doing the harder work, but they are being paid lesser. Even in agriculture, women do so much of work, but they get lesser amount of wages. So yes, certainly. And as I said, if you are holding back 50% of the population, whether by default or by design, no economy is going to become sustainable. And in fact, there are figures. If you look at the McKinsey report year after year, for India or the WEF data, or the ILO data, it is said that India could add about $770 billion if there was gender equality at workspaces. Now, what do you say of that? What are we waiting for? So yes, we need to recognize the contribution of women, not just for economic purposes, but for social justice also. It's unjust if you're not recognizing it. It's so this is a human rights issue. So yes, it's very important.
We would like to know more about the online system for registering complaints related to crime against women that you were successfully able to set up. Did you come up with such an innovative solution for the follow-up of cases?
See, whenever these things happen, whenever innovative things happen, it happens as a part of teamwork, right? Who leads it is a different story. So again, it was in 2014-15, same point of time when the Mahila Samman Prakoshth was being, the foundation was being laid and it was built upon. So what happened is I started talking to a cross section of people. I would talk to students, I would talk to lecturers, I would talk to professors, I would talk to doctors, etc., etc. Everything. I was basically posted as ADG Economic Offences Wing, but was asked to set up this UP Police Mahila Samman Prakoshth. So I became initially ADG and then DG. I said that, look, I want to take over, even though I am DG, I would like to give a shape to this, because that was a part of my vision also at that point of time. So we started working in a team, and the main, the starting point was women would come and tell me that it's very difficult for women to go to the police station, especially in the rural areas. So it came to my mind that, okay, if the woman cannot go to the police station, let the thana come to the doorstep of the woman. So how could that be? How could that happen? So we kind of started looking at technology, and we leveraged technology to set up this portal. Now, there were certain inbuilt things in that portal. A woman from any district, and UP had 75 districts at that point of time, he could log in, provided there were internet connections. And believe me, at that point of time, a lot of people had internet connections, even in the remote areas. So internet was growing at that point of time. So they could log in and they would, write their complaint. It was bilingual, so it could be Hindi, or if it was from the urban areas, it could be done in English. Now, when that was done, a kind of, acknowledgement number was generated, like you have OTPs today, right? So a number was generated, which became the complaint number. Now, I had requested the DGP that in every district, there should be a set of people who would be receiving these complaints online, right? And as soon as the complaint was received, there was an inbuilt system within that portal that it would fire SMSs that such and such a complaint number has been registered at such and such a police station in this district. So that SMS would go to the concerned SP of the district. It would go to the DIG, it would go to the IG, and one SMS came to me as the ADG and later on as DG of Mahila Samman Prakosh. There was an inbuilt system in it that within 24 hours, the concerned police station had to upload an ATR, that is the action taken report, right? If they didn't, it would be showing up at our end, at the end of the SP, DIG and IG, and we could very well pull up that police station and say that, look, this complaint has been registered, but you have not done anything about it. Now, doing something about it, an ATR could be generated simply. Somebody from the police station went to that woman's house and asked her what has happened. What wrong has been done to that? That could be ATR. There was an inbuilt system of, reviewing and feedback. So if for a couple of days there was no action at the end of the police station, nobody went to the woman's house, they did nothing about it, right? I would write a letter and talk to the SP and say that, look, this is pending from such and such a time. Please look into it and let us know what the truth is. Many a times, the complainant would get back to us on a phone or send another follow-up letter saying that nothing has been done in my case. So that was another trigger to find out that why nothing was done in that case. And every first of every month, I would review all the cases that were coming in, right? So that was a kind of foolproof. GT talks about governance, talks about transparency, right? Talks about accountability. This was one tool which was ensuring all these things. Because many a times, women came and told me that, we go to the police station, they write down our complaints and then the complaints get lost. Now, digital footprints don't get lost. So if something has been uploaded, it's going to be there for all times to come. So this system was ensuring all these things. And believe me, initially people told me that, look, it's going to be an urban biased and urban based tool that you're going to use, because where will people in rural areas have internet? But then again, I told you, lots of people in the villages started having internet at that time. Probably we are the largest internet users in the world, I think. At least mobile use and smartphones, most of them were having. Right from the milkman to the vegetable wala and all those. And many women were actually doing business on smartphones from remote areas. So that was there. And when every month, I would look at the data, the statistics, I found month after month that the ratio between the complaints coming from the urban thanas were more or less equal to the complaints coming from the rural police stations of UP. And about 26 to 28% of, if I remember correctly today, of those complaints were being converted into FIRs. They were being investigated. Charge sheets were being put into place. Even convictions happened in many of those cases. So here you are providing women with a tool which they could use at their convenience, because they could type up the complaint at any point of time during the day. And here was continuous monitoring and feedback. See, the problem is, as officers or as as a part of governance, we come up with brilliant ideas. But if you don't continuously monitor whatever you're doing, and if you're not open to taking feedbacks, it gets you nowhere. We were getting great results because we were open to criticism, we were open to feedbacks. Because, that complainant could call me up. We had those huge numbers, everybody knew about it. And they would say that, ma'am, you said that, yeah, one of the things was in that inbuilt system that the identity of the complainant wouldn't be known because the Thana guys would go in civvies, in civilian press. So one woman calls me up and says, "Ki aap log to itna bole ki nobody will know my identity. Now these guys come in uniform with a siren, blazing out on a jeep. To sabko pata chal jayega." Then I had to go back. I had to call the vendor, right? And it was also being done by one of the IGs in the technical department, tech services of the police. So we sat down again and then we had to block that. We had to tell the SPs that, look, you're supposed to send people in CVs. Initially, again, when that system was designed, it was open to everybody. Then one of the complainants, again, they came and told us that, see, if you keep it open to everybody, the press guys will know our identity. And she was right. So we had to, block her identity with XXX and that kind of stuff, right? Like you have in credit cards. So you have to be open. You have to be open to the feedback. Otherwise, your system will crumble and certainly it's not going to improve. And again, remember, you are a part of the service delivery system. You're meant to serve the underserved, the vulnerable. So you can't sit in an ivory tower and say, okay, everything is hunky-dory. No, it's not going to get the police anywhere. It's not going to get governance anywhere unless you are connected with the people, unless that trust deficit you're able to remove. There's a lot of trust deficit between the citizens and the police or whoever is delivering the governance part. That has to be erased. Yeah.
Ma'am, we spoke about data. I wanted to know how reliable data collected during pandemic is, especially about women and child safety.
See, data is an issue in our country, right? And there are several reasons for it. I have always found a data haze and a data maze, that's what I call. So data collected may not be representative completely of the ground situation. But yes, I think with like I said, digital footprints, right? So the data cannot go missing, right? And there has been improvement in the ways of collection of data, unless it is the aim is not to collect the data, right? So that can also be dodged. But yes, we have improved upon ways and means of collecting data. And you will see even in the NCRB reports, you will see more crimes are being reported against women, right? Now, there are two aspects of it. A, more women are coming up and reporting offenses against them. And number two, the crimes are also increasing. So it's both. So pandemic, I think the trend has continued, whatever the trend was before. Although, yes, collection systems have improved and more women and even children. And after all the things that are being told, good touch, bad touch, this, that, even the children are speaking up now. And women are also speaking up. They're taking help of NGOs. They're taking help of people who can speak on their behalf also, and they're coming forward. Although it is not completely representative of the actual ground situation. Like, for a small thing like POSH, if you interview women, and these are statistics, only 3 to 4% women speak up. Largely, they don't speak up. So that is there. It's not truly representative of the ground situation.
Yes, ma'am. Um, do you see any different perspective or unique ideas exclusive to women coming into the table while dealing with the important issues?
You mean something unique in the women who are coming to the table?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Some different connotations to it.
Okay. So I would say that, like I started off also, every organization needs diversity. If you have the same type of people with the same thought process, you're going to land up at the same place every day, day in and day out, right? So when you bring in diversity, and yes, women do bring diversity to the table, and it is a proven fact that diversity accompanied by inclusivity, right? Exclusion will not get you that result, because diversity is just the starting point. Unless you make that person feel that, okay, I'm important to the organization, right? That person is not going to contribute her best. She won't, right? So this is inclusion. You make them feel that, okay, we value you, we value your presence. So if you have a woman who is coming with new ideas, right? I'll give you one or two examples also to prove what I'm trying to say. Things will improve. Now, let me give you a small example. And, therefore, you have these concepts of gender responsive budgeting, gender budgeting. What does it mean? It means that you give due importance to the issue of gender, etc., within the organization. Now, a small example. For anti-riot exercises, performances, when the force is facing law and order issues, they wear those, body protectors, right? So now, initially, body protectors used to be the same for men and women. Then, with senior women officers coming on boards who were, which was looking into provisioning, say in the central police forces or the state forces, it was, it came to the forefront that if you design the body protectors as per the body shape of the women, it's more ergonomic for them to perform when required, when they fight, when they face crowds. So that is one thing. So a woman coming onto the table, she understands because she has gone through that. It is her experience which she is bringing onto the table, and that experience, if accepted and if converted, will give the desired outcome. So this was one example, right? Similarly, and I'm talking of years back now, things are improving every day. When women come with these experiences, when they talk about these experiences, things change. And therefore, it's very important to have diversity at the table, diversity within an organization, because then you have diversity, you have innovative ideas. So, years back, women were expected in a police station, they were expected to be there even doing night duty or maybe during the day. But there weren't separate toilets for them. Talking of years back, now they've started that. So unless you are, doing gender budgeting, you won't understand the problems which women face. And who will best highlight it? The woman who has experienced it, or who has seen some other woman experiencing it. So even in non-police organizations, say even in the corporate setting, right, you will observe a trend. in which there is a lot of recruitment initially of women also. But as they go up the ladder, it's a pyramid. You know, it's a pyramid. These women are just falling off the corporate ladder. Why? Now, there are several reasons. And if the organization does not understand this, and if there aren't enough women at the policy level who raise these issues, or if there aren't enough men who are allies and are sensitive to these issues, this is what exactly will happen, this pyramid. Right. So what are those issues? Now, women may have to look after their families. They may not have anybody at home to look after their families, the care work, etc. So they just go off. They just leave their jobs. There may be security issues. There may be that these women are harassed at the workplace. So if nobody is looking at it, nobody is empathizing with them, nobody is understanding their problems, they will just go off. They would prefer to sit at home than come to a workplace where they're harassed. Right? Third, you know, returning women, returning mothers are penalized. This is a very well laid out principle in organizations, especially in the corporates. You are penalized if you're a new mother. So these are the issues which have to be taken care of. And how do you understand these issues? Again, I said either you are a woman or you have seen a woman experiencing these problems, or you have that compassion and that empathy to be an ally. So it's important that these issues are raised. It's important that women bring these issues to the table. You see, you look around, there are just 3 to 4% women CEOs, maybe 5, 6, across all those Fortune 500 companies. And even in police today, what have you got? You've got about 7 to 8% women across the ranks. So that's an important issue. Yeah.
What would you like to
Thank you.
suggest to youngsters today who are willing to join the civil services?
Oh, they must join it. That's how change will come, because they'll come with new ideas. But, you know, I will always say that because the topic is largely or related to women, I think, you know, now, and I've mentioned it in my TED talk also, and I keep mentioning it whenever I get the chance. See, women will also have to understand that they are, you know, bringing in unique traits. Many people tell me that, look, you talk of there should be more women in the police force, but that woman at the police station is as foul-mouthed as her male counterparts. So what could be the reason for that? You know, she is trying to survive in that environment by copying what is happening around her, copying her male colleagues. She needs to be told that she is bringing in a unique perspective, being a woman, and that she should stand up to it. There would be certain unique qualities in her. After all, you know, we all have different blueprints. We all are unique. We are all unique but, you know, limited editions. So we all have a canvas and we have to paint it in the unique way. And that's why I say that right from the beginning, we must teach our children to dream their own dreams. Parents should not impose their own unfulfilled dreams on their children, because it's so difficult to keep dreaming somebody else's dream. It's not sustainable. So you have to fix your own goals, and you have to. So this is something, heartfelt advice which I would give to youngsters, especially young girls and women, if they're willing to listen. because I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I wish somebody had told me all these things when I started out on my life away from home. So it's very important to be your authentic self. After all, if somebody of English literature background, there's that know thyself and to thine own self be true. What does it mean? It means you have to be your authentic self. And that is the unique thing. You cannot be somebody else all the time. You don't need to. First of all, you don't need to. Secondly, you cannot be. Third thing is, wherever you are going, whichever profession you choose, you must know the hard and the soft skills related to it. That's very important because that is going to give you an advantage over the others. So whether you are a man or a woman, that difference will dissolve if you are competent in whatever you're doing. It can be the police service, it can be anything, right? It can be the civil services, it can be the lectureship, it can be academia, whatever. And that includes, digital literacy and legal literacy. Because a woman must know the laws of the land. Otherwise, how does she take advantage of it? So these two types of literacies are very important, right? Apart from reading, writing, and arithmetic, this is very important. And another thing which I have understood is, with due respect to all men around, they are very good at networking. Women are pretty bad at networking. So that is very important. We need to build our tribe, which we miss out on. These support systems are so important. You support somebody who is in need, and in turn, you get supported. Right? So that is also very important. See, after all, okay, the whole world will come to your help, but you are the first responder of your own problems, your challenges. Who responds first to your own challenges? It's you. So you have to build up you. You, I would say, not somebody else. It's you. It's who is important and who is the first responder. So you have to build up your own strengths first. And then if somebody helps, it's a bonus. Then if the organization helps, it's a bigger bonus. But first you have to do it. And was a very cute response from one of the girls in the schools when we were going in for those. It was a program called Akshaya. And you know what happened? It was an interactive session under another program, which I used to call Rubaru. So I was interacting with these girl students and boys. Rubaru was for all the children, girls and boys. So one of the girls comes up and says that, okay, ma'am, we understand everything that you are saying. It's so nice, this, that. But, whenever we go for tuitions after class, our parents send our 5-year-old brother with us. How much is that brother going to protect us? So why don't you teach us USC, right? The little bit of unarmed combat, because we are the first responders to any problem that comes. It was such a profound thing which she told. So what does it mean? You are basically the first responder to the first challenge that comes to you. Then others come in. So you have to realize your strengths and grow them, strengthen them further. That's very important. And for that, normally we talk about what? Normally, what is the discussion in an average Indian family? How much marks did you get? Why did you get 0.5 marks less than your friend? Right? Etc. Etc. But I think it's more important to learn emotional responses, what is called the emotional quotient nowadays, right? Intelligence quotient is one thing. And then even in IQ, there are so many different types of intelligences, spatial intelligence, etc., etc. So emotional intelligence is very important because you learn resilience. Problems are going to come to you. They come to everybody without exception. but how you respond is most important. So that resilience is important, that self-belief is important. Even if the whole world is trying to pull you down, if your goals are clear and if you are sure about yourself, if your self-belief is so strong, believe me, nobody can do anything to you. So these are the things which children need to know today. And these are the things which parents, they should teach their children. With internet, information, too much of information is a problem. But it's difficult for the internet to teach you resilience. That the parents have to teach. So these are the things which I feel every youngster should concentrate on. Because, IQ is what? It will teach you, or the hard skills will teach you how to be capable. But who teaches you and how do you learn how to cope? Copability is perhaps even more important than capability. In today's, what you people would call a VUCA world, when nothing is certain. So it's very important to grow these thoughts inside you and these ways of responding to your challenges. So that would be my all-time message to even myself and even to anybody who's willing to listen. Yeah. Does that make sense? I've been talking and talking from all, I don't know how many hours. Does that make sense? I mean, does it resonate with what you people also think about these issues?
Absolutely, ma'am. I feel like emotional intelligence is one thing that I wish they taught us in school. I wish they taught us how to balance our emotions and how to, because especially during the pandemic, I see so many people my age and even my students who go through these issues who don't know how to handle it. So as you rightly put it, copability is so much more important than capability. Thank you for highlighting.
I also wish that in school they would have taught us financial management. For years, I didn't know what to do, how to how to grow one's money. That's very important. We don't teach children all these things. We don't teach them. We don't do legal literacy to them. It's very important to know the laws of the land. Of course, I'm not questioning the teaching of history or geography, but I wish these things were also, but now I think there is a realization about these things. So you have a lot of counselors also in schools compulsorily. So yes, there's great need to emphasize these aspects also, the softer skills which are required to navigate in life.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Now we open the floor for audience to ask the questions. You may raise your hand and unmute and ask. I think Vedant has a question.
Or they
Vedant, go
could
ahead.
type in the chat box and you could read it out. Yeah, somebody had a question.
Yes, ma'am. Vedant has a question.
Pushya?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, good evening, ma'am. This is Vedant Vaishali Jayant. I'm the student convener of this center. Ma'am, thank you for your enlightening words and the entire enthusiasm which has been shown by you in the interview. Ma'am, since the start, I am having one question to which I wanted to ask you. Since our conversation began with the training, the police training, which Kalyani asked. So, ma'am, in our center, one of our members have written an article on the day of Subhash Chandra Bose birth anniversary, saying that Subhash Chandra Bose a feminist march because he was the one who included the Rani Jhansi regiment. And ma'am, you might be aware that the entire controversy of female in army because of the combat training, which is the reason cited by the government. Ma'am, so how do you look at this entire issue? So just neglecting the or canceling females on the basis of that the training is rigorous and that's why not allowing them in army. So how fair is this? And what is your opinion on this? Since you coming from a police background and you yourself have experienced that rigorous training, so you will be better able to guide us on this.
I am not too sure about what arguments are advanced, because I don't think there is any argument which can be given, to exclude women from army, etc. How do women in Israel, right? How do they fight battles then? And what segment, what profession is there? Tell me, where women have, if given an opportunity and if given a chance and if given the right training, whether it's so hard or so easy, I'm not concerned that they haven't excelled. You must also be seeing, there are now 2 generations of women pilots. The mother and the daughter are pilots. There are countries where women are fighting at the borders. So what prevents? I don't understand. And this is discrimination. So let the woman say, I can't do it. Where is the need to presume everything on her behalf that, okay, she can't do this, she can't. Let her say, I don't want to do it. It has to be her choice. But offer the opportunity, right? Let her say, I don't want to do it or I can't do it. Then it's fair. But not giving the opportunity is unfair. Right? Yeah.
Yes, Prakriti, go ahead.
Mama, I have a question. So
Yes.
you were talking about how women are comparatively bad at networking and that we must build our own tribe. Do you think it has anything to do with the way they're conditioned from a young age to look at other women as competitors instead of, a friend or an acquaintance? And that women are more likely to be put under a microscope by society as compared to men, which brings up this ugly side of competitiveness?
Well, it could be, yes. It could be, but then again, see, somewhere we need to understand that there is enough for everybody, right? And there's always more room at the top. If you are better than somebody, and if things are merit based, why should you not be given that position, whatever you're looking at, right? Secondly, again, it's an issue of upbringing. Most of the times in the family, we are always taught about competition. We are not taught too much about collaboration, but many a times in life, I have felt that collaboration is more, more beneficial than competition. So if that value can be inculcated in girls, and when they become women, they will start looking at the other woman also as an ally, rather than a competitor who is out there to, run away with the entire cake. Right? So these are things which we need to, again, these are values which are inculcated right from the beginning. And what you're saying is true. Yes. Many people ask me that, look, the biggest perpetrator of injustice on X woman is the Y woman, and this and that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law syndrome and all that. Well, it is true to a large extent, because then we start seeing each other as competitors, and the previous generation, say of the mother-in-law, finds it within the comfort zone to kind of, it's unfortunate, but kind of maintain the patriarchal setup, which she has undergone, whether it's the victim psychology, I don't know, right? Or it is that her comfort zone is continuing. If she has a daughter-in-law who doesn't question her, if she has a daughter-in-law who does everything which she wants, so somehow these things are perpetuated, again by wrong upbringing, again by victim psychology. Look, I have been subjected to this, so now I'm going to subject whoever is in front of me to the same problem, to the same challenges, to the same troubles. So every human being, whether man or woman, has to expand his or her vision. You cannot limit yourself. And it's all inside here. It's all here. Either you expand yourself or you limit yourself. If you continuously give messages, negative messages, and limiting messages to your brain, that's what you become. And then all these problems arise. So awareness is one thing. Continuously expanding yourself is another thing. So when you do that, you become a better human being. So the ultimate goal is to become a better human being than where you started with. I look at it that way. I don't know if it makes sense to you, and if it has answered your question a little bit, I think, yeah. Unless you have a different opinion, which you can also share, because I believe these platforms are meant to share your opinions also, not just keep listening. So if you have a different opinion, then you can speak up and then we can argue on that. But this is what I feel. And this is why inequality, gender inequality is an intergenerational issue. We carry it from generation to generation because that becomes our comfort zone. So every person has to challenge the status quo. Then only change will happen. Otherwise, we'll carry the same flag from one generation to the other. And whatever change that has come has been because girls have stood up for their rights, women have stood up for their rights. And you talk of LGBTQ. Now, today we have a transgender bill. Why? Because they stood up. And these are human rights issues. Why should they not get the same treatment as the other genders? Right? So you have to question the status quo. Otherwise, nothing changes. You're walking the same path all the time, every day, every hour. Yeah. Any other question?
Janvi, I think you are on mute.
Tanvi, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, ma'am, for your insightful words. But because of paucity of time, I believe we need to stop here. So, yeah, I really thank you for answering patiently and in depth all the questions that we posed, and also the audience for the questions. I would now like to request Ms. Advocate Sonali Shela to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Thank you, Janvi, and thank you so much, ma'am. So I would like to say, ma'am, you are such an effective and a powerful person. It's been an absolute honor listening to your perspective. This is so important, I think, especially now when the scenario related to safety of women and children is changing at such a rapid speed during the pandemic. The cases of harassment and assault of women and children have increased. There has been a reported increase of 95% in the streaming of child pornography since the pandemic started in March 2020. This is happening, and at the same time, we have a legislation that keeps stressing on bringing back capital punishment. And as all of us know, all that does is it just reduces the number of reporting. What capital punishment does is it puts burden on the shoulders of the victim, and then they have to wonder whether they should report or not. We have so many things happening at the same time. It's very important that we keep talking about it. You also discuss the subject of how women end up being the gatekeepers of patriarchy themselves, because we already make it so difficult for them to achieve little things. Like we had senior journalists questioning period leave because they had to do the coverage in risky areas during difficult days. So accessibility is such a big question. There is so much I can say that I've learned through this short talk, but I will keep it short, and I will thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I would also like to thank the VC of the university. I would also like to thank the entire team of the center in MNLU. And thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. It has been brilliant listening to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great interacting with all of you. Lovely. Thank you. Stay safe. Bye-bye, all of you. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
ma'am.
Yeah, just before everyone leaves, I just request everyone to fill the feedback form that is in the link in the chat box. Thank you for joining us and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.